So where would your job as a composer and the job of kind of the artistic director start?
Right, that's a
Because
tricky one.
they seem to overlap from what you're saying.
Some to a point, yes. It depends. It depends on the composer. It depends on. I think it depends on the individual, how much he wants to let go. There are those who would be willing to write a piece and then leave it to the performers to work it out in their own way. There are others who would like to keep control until the very end. I think it would depend on the context again. It depends on whom you're working with and your relationship with the performers. As if you're working with performers that you really know well and that you've been working for a very long time, you'd have a more friendly relationship and you'd be more willing to let go because they would know better what you really want out of the work.
And since you also started working with even choirs abroad and orchestras abroad, and you're studying abroad now, do you find differences between working with kind of musicians coming from different cultures?
Oh yes, that's very intriguing actually, because you get a better mix and a bigger mix of ideas and ways of looking at things, different perspectives. And that's, I guess that's one of the most brilliant things about being in London, is that there's a multicultural atmosphere, and you can meet people coming from all over the world, everyone coming up with different ideas, everyone has his own way of looking at music and all the other aspects of life. And it's very interesting to see how these combine together and things come out constantly of these combinations and juxtapositions.
We tend to associate classic music primarily with the great masters of the past. Now you are a composer of contemporary classic music. How do you relate yourself to the works of the masters of the past, kind of, and how do you see contemporary music evolving or revolutionizing the scene?
That's a tricky question.
Because it's always intriguing.
Yes, yeah, exactly. With contemporary classical music, I think it's a very niche field with not a very wide audience, unfortunately. And it moved so fast in the past few years. It evolved in a revolutionary way, but it's still I would still call it an evolution. Okay. During the past 50, 60 years, that those who are mainly not in the field might not really understand what's going on, and that's one of the challenges actually of contemporary classical music.
So kind of to understand or to appreciate contemporary,
exactly.
You need to have a good understanding of what came before. It's
not
easier.
Necessarily. I would say it's easier because you can see a line threading through, but at the same time we create music. Not necessarily with a baggage of what's happened before. I mean, we can't expect our audiences to be constantly aware of what's happened before, because that would obviously make the audience really, really small. So it's a challenge, I guess, with contemporary classical music, to find ways of linking and moving out and reaching out to a wider audiences, without at the same time making too much of a compromise to give up on its principles or on its ideas. It's a very tricky subject, because it has to do with aesthetics, I guess, because we trained that something which is good has to be aesthetically good and pleasing. And the thing with contemporary classical music and most of contemporary art is that it does not necessarily have to be pleasing in the way that we really understand, like something pleasing on the eye or pleasing on the ears or something that drives us emotionally. So I guess it has to do more with thinking nowadays rather than with feelings. So that could be the challenge of contemporary classical music today.
It is also happening at this point in time, so
exactly,
it has to be kind of relevant for...
In a way, yes, exactly. But I guess it always has been the case with music, like with music of Beethoven and music of other great masters, was not necessarily constantly appreciated at their own time. And they were eventually discovered and understood in the progress of time. And I guess that could also be the thing with the contemporary classical music.
You've already mentioned the relationship between music and other forms of art. which we usually tend to find, for instance, more in chamber music.
Exactly.
Right? And you've already been experimenting with this primarily with the architecture forms. Can you explain a bit more how is this something that is becoming integral to the contemporary classic?
I would say yes. It's been actually explored for quite a long time now, for the past few decades, and it's a way of music broadening out to other forms of art, and creating links, and transposing ideas and ways of seeing things actually. So with the architecture, there have been loads of pieces performed in different spaces and exploring how the same piece of music can be heard in different contexts, say in a room or in a concert hall or even outside or in a historical building, and the way they can interact with the building and create a more like a 3D experience rather than sitting down, closing your eyes and listening to music. There are also other interdisciplinary ways of dealing with music, like music and dance, or music and painting and arts, or visual arts in a broader sense, or even with installations, which is becoming more and more common to be explored. And this also creates links with other artists, and that's a very exciting prospect of not closing yourself within your own circle, but creating fusions and links with other artists. I find that very exciting.
Talking about your career, the career of a composer nowadays, what does it entail?
Right. It's very, I wouldn't say that today it's very easy for a composer to make a living only on composition. So a composer today has to explore other areas where he can be professionally involved. And these involve curating, working in the arts management field, being a performer too, working in the educational field, which is expanding constantly.
That will definitely help then the appreciation.
Exactly too. That links. They're all linked together. With education, there's constantly the need for more awareness and more awareness of what's going on, and also music education is part of the holistic approach to education, rather than studying only the academic subjects. And it helps also in so many ways, not necessarily by learning an instrument, but it broadens up one's knowledge and one's appreciation of what's going around.
A student had to come up to you, like for instance, if you had to speak to yourself at age 14, what advice would you give that student?
Right, advice. I would say to never give up, to constantly believe in what you want to do, and be pragmatic. Don't get carried away too much that you lose track of what reality is, because at the end of the day, we live in a real world. There are things you have to deal with, like finances and meeting with other people and getting to know different people. It can be tricky sometimes. But yeah, I would say never give up, stick to your own ideas, and be programmatic.
The BOV Joseph Calleja Foundation, you are one of its scholars. What did it mean to you as a scholar?
It means loads, because it helps with your daily life. Being a student anywhere is difficult, let alone being a student in London, which is one of the most expensive cities in the world. It's been very helpful, and it gives you enough help to allow you to concentrate on your studies, whilst also being able to live in a very difficult city as London. It's been wonderful, and I'm very grateful for the help, because were it not for the help of so many of the BOV Joseph Calleja Foundation, I wouldn't probably have been able to further my studies and be in a comfortable position to focus on what I really want to do.
And with regards to your relationship with the other scholars, do you do you connect? Most of you are studying in London.
Yeah, most of us are studying in London. I do have contacts with for example, I'm working currently on a song cycle with Marvick Monreal. The song cycle is also commissioned by the BOV Joseph Calleja Foundation.
That's good.
And it's based on Maltese poems by Adrian Grima. And it's going to be performed next month. I'm really looking forward to be working with Marvick and Christine Zarafa, playing the piano. It should be a good one.
So you're kind of collaborating together.
Exactly.
That's nice. That's very